Hello again, it's the ancient UAV pilot here again. I recently posted a video of my Phantom 4 carrying a 360 fly camera. I've always found this quite an intriguing prospect, so I've tried out a few things, and I have had a number of questions on the video of how I do particular things, so I thought I'll go into it in a bit more detail. Now, the first thing that you're going to need is one of these, and this is a gimbal protector which fits under your Phantom, and it sits on the landing gear. Now, the first thing you've got to do is to drill a hole through the middle, which I've done right here, and find an appropriate screw which will then fit onto your 360 fly camera. Now, before you can place this onto the Phantom, the first thing wise to do is to start up the Phantom. So let's do that. Right, there we go. And that allows everything to settle down. Now, I need the camera on the Phantom to be out of the way, which it has done itself when it's booted up. The next thing I need to do is decide which way I want the gimbal protector. Now, in the manual it should be fitted here underneath the gimbal, of course, and that would be so that if you had a hard landing or a rocky landing, then the protector's not going to come off. However, for the purposes of attaching the 360 fly, I found it a better idea to place it up this way. So that way, if I get a hard landing, then this is going to pop off and hopefully protect my 360 fly to a certain extent. So there we go. Let's put the whole thing together then. It's a little bit fiddly doing this, but that's okay. I can live with it. And it's got to engage the screw. There we go. I don't mind which way the camera itself is orientated, as long as it's facing directly down, of course. I do want it to be just tight enough in case any vibrations from the motors on the Phantom were to make it loosen off. There we go, and that's nice and firm on there. Now I can place the camera now to carry the load in the best way. I think that it must be directly in line underneath the gimbal, which would be the centre of gravity, of course, and that will help the engines, the motors on my Phantom, to compensate for the extra weight. So the next thing I've got to think about is, how am I going to take off? Because I can't put that on the ground, can I? So I've created this simple little device, and here we go. There it is, that's it. Just 3 pieces of wood screwed together, but with enough of a gap to allow the Phantom on top with a 360 fly dangling underneath. It could be this way, or it could be that way. Now I've found that for me this way is better, because that allows the Phantom during takeoff a little bit of forward or backward movement as it's taking off. If that happens with your takeoff ramp this way, then each time your Fly 360 camera will be banging against this, which won't do it any good at all. So I hope that's pretty clear. Now the next thing, because of the extra load and the compensation that the motors have to make to fly the Phantom itself with the extra load on board, I'm very careful about the flying conditions which I choose, and I want them to be just about as perfect as they can get. And of course I want to be in a wide open space where there's no people and I can see my drone at all times. Now I tried this as you've maybe seen already on a previous on a previous video on YouTube. That went pretty well, and I've had a second takeoff, and that video clip is going to follow this, and then afterwards I'll do a bit of an overview on how I think it all went. Okay, so yeah, watch the video clips, quite interesting I think.
Yeah.
Well, after that particular flight, that was my second flight with my Phantom carrying the 360 fly camera. Now there's a number of things to take into account. Is first that you'll notice that when you do have the 360 fly attached, it does look very much like a bomb, right? And that can, by all sorts of members of the public would see that if they were around, and any sorts of problems could occur from that for you. So being away from people is a really good idea when you do this. Now, the venue which I chose, which was a reasonably good venue, there's a couple of things that I'd like to have improved on, and one was that you will notice that the Phantom 4 was not rock steady, and that's, well, I put that down partly to the fact that there was a bit of a gusty wind blowing at the time, and you will notice from the 360 fly that the mic is working, so it picks up the motor noise. That can be edited out if you want to, if you have an editing suite of some sort. However, the Phantom 4 is working hard to try its best to keep the camera on an even foil. Yeah. So there was a lot of movement in the air as the Phantom was working. And the next thing was there was a number of quite tall trees around, quite in close, proximity to where I was flying, and if the Phantom did go off course somewhere and came down, it would get hung up in the trees, which once again would pose a few problems of how you're going to retrieve that. So key points there is wide open spaces, no people, can't go wrong. So if you're going to try this, enjoy it, and if you do have any other questions, then do come back to me. This is one question I might get, is what's that piece of tape doing on there? And all that's for is so I don't lose the screw that attaches. A catch landing is potentially very dangerous, so make sure that you have your controller handy and that you can shut down your motors immediately. Enjoy.